All right, guys, what do you say we get started?
Sure,
Ready? Okay.
do it.
All
Okay.
right, stupid question. Do we have minutes? I was not at the last meeting. I know I understood we approved all the minutes for the prior months.
No, I
Yeah.
don't think we did, did we?
Not all of them. We have January, February, and then last month's April.
All right, can we take care of January and February? Well, March, obviously, I was not. Wait, last month was April, correct? I was not at April. So January and February, I reviewed and I thought they were fine. Did everybody else have a chance to look at them?
Yep.
So I guess can I have a motion to accept the minutes for January, February?
So move.
I think
I'll
you have to do
second.
each separately or no?
Sure. Let's do January 1st then, MJ.
Yes, so moved.
All in
Second.
favor? Jan was the first, MJ was the
Aye.
second. All in
Okay,
favor?
second, sure.
Unanimous. Okay, and then can I have a motion to accept February's minutes?
I'll make a motion.
Second?
I'll second.
Again, there we go. Okay, all in favor? Great. We're good.
Yay.
March, did we have March, Cheryl, or?
We already did March, didn't
We
we?
did March, good.
We're good.
All right, good. And last month I have to step out of, so unless you guys want, was there anybody review last month's and want to approve those too?
I don't think we got last month's.
Yeah, I didn't get last month.
Okay, all right, so let's put that aside. We're good.
You should have been in your packet.
It's in the package.
I didn't see
Anyway.
them. I had a
All right.
leak.
Okay.
If it's okay with you guys, let's put that off till next month. You guys can have a chance to review it. We can take it up next month.
Great, thank you.
Okay, so let's do Needleman. Which is returning one, the pool equipment and so on. Okay, do we have a representative for Needleman here?
Yes, I'm just moving Grace Kennedy over.
Hi.
Hi, Grace.
Hi, how are you?
Mark Galezzo here. Okay, so we're looking at the map and it looks like we've got an option 1 and an option 2 for, you know what, let me ask this first. Max, have you been out to the site? Is there any additional information we need, or is it as we left it?
It's basically as you left it.
Okay, so if I recall, there was the question about were they gonna start to remove some of the material that had been dumped within the, along the back of that wall? Yes?
Yes.
Yeah,
And
Grace, you started that, right?
Yeah, that's pretty
We're done, it's done.
well finished. And we planted some things and I'm waiting for more to come in. But yeah, I'm just,
Okay.
Yeah.
So then the main issue really was the location of the pool filters, and we have option 1, which is basically where it was originally intended. And then we have option 2, which is where we suggested, which is outside of the 100-foot buffer. And I'll offer my opinion first, but let's open it up to everybody. I feel like it should be kept at option 2.
it's actually, if I could butt in here for a second, option 2 has kind of been taken off the table because she put a wall in and we couldn't really get it to a place where it wasn't sitting on right on top of ledge. And it would be such a, getting pipes up there, trenching, we'd be killing trees. It was really difficult to make it so that it fit within the buffer and wasn't a gigantic eyesore. So we just took that off the table. And then our second choice is, and least favorite, but still second, is inside the barn itself. So we come out the same place at the end of the vegetable garden and then go east and then south into the building.
I guess I don't want to over speak here. So anybody else want to chime in?
I'm not happy with it being in the buffer as it is, which is, I guess, option 1. Am I correct in that? Looking at the plan?
Yes, I believe so.
Why not put it in the barn then?
Well, I
Yeah.
mean, it's a possibility, certainly, it takes up a certain amount of space, but it's not an impossibility. It's, almost as much trenching as going down to the compost area. So,
But it's in a previously, we'll call it disturbed or developed site. That's my feeling.
well, to be fair, the compost area is too. I mean, it's already an existing concrete foundation. So, and that soil has been worked on over the years as well.
Where is the compost area?
If you look at the plan, it's headed, it's just above the vegetable garden and to the right. It's
Well-
down the hill toward the
Okay.
wetland.
I mean, to add something, putting it in the barn would certainly decrease the amount of trenching you would have to do if that is a concern for you for the option that we like, which is option 2.
Yeah,
If you go in the barn, you're doing yourself an even more of a favor by less trenching. So there's an advantage there.
yeah, it's a tiny bit more going in the barn than it is going down to the compost. But yeah, it certainly is. There's just so much ledge on that hill that,
Yeah, no, I can appreciate the ledge issue. I'm building a house right now where the entire house is on ledge, so
Yeah.
I understand.
Yeah.
The line that comes out of the left back corner of the barn and then goes across the back of through the vegetable garden and then out into the middle of the vegetable garden and then continues on to the fork. That is the trench that we're talking about, right?
that we've dug until the end of the vegetable garden. So that's all in and ready to be determined if we go left or right. So,
Okay, so if you were to, I mean, quite honestly, I'm not sure why you would have gone through all the trouble to dig that before you got approval from us. But I think if you were to put it in the barn, then rather than digging the trench out the back of the barn, what is that start point where it starts inside the barn? That's where I assume the electric service is right there?
it starts outside the barn. Everything is actually out on the left-hand side of the barn. Inside the vegetable garden is where all the pool, everything came in from the pool into that site and then went into the barn there. So that was our start point. The electric, the plumbing, all that stuff was already present there. And I did check with Max about digging the trench within the vegetable garden because it was already a disturbed site.
Right, I would have no problem digging it. I'm just saying, if you didn't know where you were gonna have to go, wouldn't it have made more sense to figure out where we were gonna agree upon between all of us? But, it's a moot point. I don't know. I think if there were some mitigation, I'm gonna throw this out to my fellow board members, or there was some give back on the part of the applicant to do something to make the, you know what I'm saying, a mitigation in exchange. Any thoughts? And, again,
Setting a wonderful precedent.
I completely agree. I really don't want to do that. I think unnecessary things.
I mean, because to me, having been at the site, if they didn't want to go to quote unquote option 2 in the barn works, as well as, I mean, aesthetically, I guess they don't like it, but there's that courtyard / driveway that's within the L of the barn. I mean, it could certainly go somewhere there and be screened with a low fence or bushes or something. I just don't see a reason that it needs to be where option 1 is whatsoever.
MJ?
No, I don't have anything to add. I agree with Andy that, I mean, I'd like to see, I actually, I think your idea of going into the barn is probably gonna cost the landowner, the property owner less. You're not gonna have to do as much trenching. Grace, you mentioned that it would actually be a little bit more. I'm not clear on that.
Between using the compost area and then digging the trench to the, there's a bay, there are 3 bays on that lower elbow of the barn. And the area that we thought we could use would be the bay that's closest to the large part of the barn. So closest to the center of the, right at the corner. So it's about 10 feet longer, I think, of a trench to go around that corner and then in than it is to go to the compost.
I
Okay.
understand. Right, so I've forgotten that that upper rectangle of the barn, horizontal section, that's finished. That's what the work, all that.
Right, exactly. It's the lower section that has the garage bays.
Well, I mean, it's really not our kind of position to be offering solutions. We can push you in a direction, but let me throw something out. You have that right where you have it. It says -8 inches. Sort of out.
Yeah,
to the-
yeah.
In that corner right there. What is that?
That's out of the question. Because she just spent a whole ton of money to put a huge glass door right there. And that's the whole point of that glass door, was to look out and not see pool equipment.
Understood.
So-
Understood. Yeah, I think.
So yeah, that's probably eventually going to be a patio in that section. So yeah, that was, we discussed this whole back end, and she'd rather have it inside the barn than to be looking at it outside.
All right, well, I mean, if that's the only other option you're offering us, I think that's the direction we would go. Clearly, if you have other thoughts, we would consider anything.
Well, that's the problem with that site. There really aren't a lot of areas back there that aren't within the view of that huge window. So, or, her vision of their wall, the new wall, and her new gate and all that stuff. So I think that's part of the problem that we're up against is, she has the property photographed a lot. So, for various magazines. So that's kind of that's how my life has been there. So that's part of the problem, and I really can't.
All right. Well, let
She'd
me
rather
throw it
just
out.
not have it in view at all.
Before we kind of put it to bed, let me throw it out to everybody else. Just because you're on the top of my screen. Crystal, do you have anything you want to add?
I mean, I agree with Andy and MJ, and if you can figure out a way to do it so it's somewhere in the barn and not in the buffer, I think that's just, yeah, this is the way.
Okay. Thanks, Crystal. Bob, do you want to add?
Barn, not visible in the barn.
Got it. Jan?
Same.
All right, there you have it, Grace. I think
Got it.
that's what we're thinking. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Going in the barn.
Okay, so
Thanks, Grace.
I'll issue the permit then, with those changes. And then once you guys receive that, you can proceed. But you'll be able to just work through and finish the project.
Okay, that's
Do we-
terrific. Thank you.
Do we need to vote
Okay.
or no? Next.
Yes, yeah, you would.
This is a real permit. Okay, well then can I have a
Yeah.
motion to allow the placement of that filter and so on in the barn?
Yeah, contingent on that placement, yeah.
Do you need a drawing from me of where it's going to end up inside the barn?
Yeah, if you can just make a final sketch
Yep.
on where everything's gonna end up, that'd be fun.
All right, I think I saw a motion from Bob there. Am I correct, Bob? Can I have a second?
Second,
All in favor?
Aye.
I,
Unanimous. Very good. Thank you, Grace.
Thank you.
All right, new business, White, which is the pool.
Yes, I have Jason from Beatty and Watson and Evelyn White.
Hello, all.
Aye.
I guess, Jace, let me just ask if I understand the map correctly. I think we talked about this when we looked at it. Pond is on the right. Wetlands buffer is the dashed line that goes just behind, on the other side of the pool from the wetlands, on the back of the lawn by the pool enclosure fence where that infiltration area is, correct?
Correct.
100-foot lake offset. All right, so I mean, I think I'll take the lead on this one, and this one immediately falls into the same category as what we just discussed, and that's anything that is not an essential construction. It's not a septic, it's not a well, it's not something that's really absolutely necessary. The applicant needs to show some serious need and how does that, Jan, you probably know better than any of us. Do you recall exactly the wording on how that new wording that's going to go into the code or the application? I don't mean to put you on the spot.
No, not verbatim off the top of my head, but the basic theory was that the mandate of Philipstown to the Conservation Board was to focus on essentially unavoidable exceptions in terms of deciding when to grant a permit. We don't really have leeway to consider what I would call aesthetic issues or ideal placement. And absent a matter of health or public safety or an existing structure, I think the board is increasingly trying to stick to the dictates given to it by Philipstown in terms of what it has the latitude to approve and not approve. There is certainly not a blanket prohibition, particularly for existing structures or health and safety or unavoidable projects. But on issues that are essentially, this is the most pleasing option to the owner, those are increasingly, I think, things that the board is very reluctant to consider.
Thank you, Jen. And does anybody else want to add to that? I mean, I'm not really sure, I'm not sure how to say that anymore clearly. We have to, Jason, is there any reason why there's absolutely no other?
I mean, with all due respect, I mean, the pool is essential to the homeowner, and you know, if the whole idea here is, I mean, it's not just a matter of aesthetics. They're trying to preserve the same land that's to be considered under the wetlands ordinance. I mean, you're talking about, it's the same landscape that we're considering here. So if it's moved just outside, I mean, it's on the edge of the buffer. I mean, we're talking about, you know, if we were to move it out of the buffer, we're talking about destroying a whole grove of trees that are just as important outside of that 100-foot buffer as they are inside of the 100-foot buffer.
Can I interrupt just a second, Jason?
Sure.
I think the last point you made actually goes towards, you know, a reasonable discussion. But from what I can see on this drawing, there is one, the only tree that is really, I mean, obviously I haven't been to the site, so as these normally go, once you present, we go out and we look at the site and we really talk about it, but there's that one tree that you're showing being taken down right at where it shows coping elevation 626.2.
Mhm.
There's another tree back right above the word subsurface stormwater. So if the pool were moved straight back, we're not talking about a grove of trees. We're talking about one additional tree.
That, if I may jump in, I mean,
Please.
I hear you. I mean, that one additional tree is what seems to be, I wouldn't call it an old growth, but it's a giant old tulip, and we would really hate to lose that tree. I mean, what we're really attempting to do here is this site is relatively tree free. It's already lawn essentially, so it's not as if we're going to be disrupting current native property. And the area that we had originally earmarked for the pool that was outside of the buffer, yes, it was. We would have to remove trees, which we're really reluctant to do. And there is also an existing septic issue that we're really reluctant to tackle. That's just outside of the wetland buffer also. So it seemed like this area, it's not just about aesthetics, but it's really about minimally disrupting the landscape around the wetland.
And the currently proposed pool site really is the flattest part of the property. If you were to move it back, you're moving it down, and there's sort of like a little that starts to go down into like a little hollow in there, and you're moving it down. I mean, you're going to be increasing the amount considerably, I would say, the amount of earthwork that's required. I mean, I would go back to, I mean, I understand. I know that.
Let me jump in a second.
The concerns.
I don't mean to interrupt you, Jace, but I may have made an error here also. We're dealing with two wetlands here, are we not? And two buffers?
Well, I believe that the one towards the north is under the quarter-acre threshold, and I don't believe it's connected. I don't know if that's been evaluated. I believe the last time, I don't believe that's, I don't know if Max has evaluated that. But.
We're talking about the, I don't mean to laugh, but the thing that is labeled swamp.
Swamp, yeah, yeah.
Sorry, I don't mean to laugh.
But, I mean, there is a threshold though, correct? So, I mean,
yes, but the 100-foot buffer for that is that arc down at the bottom of the drawing, which goes right through the top edge of the house. And
correct.
The pool is completely within that buffer. The other buffer goes in the opposite direction and is the buffer off the lake, which means that the house, again, it goes right through the house. So the house is doubly impacted, and the pool is right smack in the middle of both of it's impacting both of the 100-foot buffers. So, I mean, in terms of like what we would ask for, the only place you could possibly put this thing is out where the generator is. And since we haven't seen that, you mentioned there's a septic issue. Where is the septic?
Well, that is there's a cesspit underneath the patio that's associated with the old part of the original portion of the house.
Mm-hmm.
And then there is a recently, I say recently, within the past 20 years, repair done underneath the driveway. You can see where the sewer manhole is.
Yes.
That's the septic tank.
Okay, so that's the tank. Where are the fields?
So the fields are between the little circle there where there's a tree in the middle of the driveway.
Yeah.
And there's like a little stone. It's right in the middle. It's right underneath the driveway. It's a tri-galley traffic rated septic system.
Right.
And the reserve septic area that was outlined in association with this subdivision that split all these lots up is right where the generator is. That is the proposed 100% reserve area.
Right, so you can't go there either.
So, I mean, at this point, I mean, I know everybody's scratching their heads, but I think the applicant would like to show the site and show,
Right.
give a tangible feel as to why everything is proposed where it is.
Yeah,
Because
we would,
I mean, although we're showing a lot of information on this plan, as always, you don't really get a sense of what's going on until you can actually see it. So I
Yeah.
think if you go out there and you see flat lawn, hopefully that helps our case a little
You know,
bit.
I'm not going to explain this very well because I am not, there are others on this board who probably understand the science better, but the concept of a buffer is you decide how far away from the wetland you have to stay so that you don't have an impact on the wetland. And that's debatable, how far away, you know, we should probably be 200 feet. It depends if it's uphill or downhill. It depends on the soil types. So the scientific community came up with this 100-foot number. That's it. And so the question is, if we're just tasked with taking that number and anything within it, we have to scrutinize to the nth degree, then unfortunately that's where we are. So, I mean, we're happy to go look at it, but every other pool application that has come in that has been within the buffer, we've been forced to decline.
is Nick Puder on? I wonder if Nick can talk to offsets and planting.
Mitigation.
Mitigation.
I'm here.
And you know, if I could just jump in too about need, you know, Philipstown does not have a public pool. There is no pool available to the public here. Number one. Number two, we have teenagers. On that front, personally, you know, there's a bad opioid epidemic here. We have teenagers. We would like a place where teenagers can come spend summer days, not having to, you know, our sons included, not having to be just hang around downtown with nothing to do. We feel like it's you know, we want our sons to be on site, to be, you know, within our family reaches, and we'd love their friends to be also. Philipstown Cold Spring does not have a public resource for kids to be you know, safely engaged, especially over the summer months. So, I mean, that's our need. Yes, we want a pool, but there's also a drive for, you know, keeping our teenagers on site.
And we're very open to, you know, moving it in a better place if that is what you all deem, you know, is the best outcome. It's just that we have looked, and this other, if we move it, we're going to have to take down trees, and but you know, we would love a place to swim, and actually the whole house, I think, is now currently within that buffer area. So, you know, talking about, you know, 200, 100 feet or whatever from the buffer, like our whole house exists on part of that too. So it's where we're placed, it puts us in a difficult position. You know, we're on 5+ acres of land, and, you know, if there's no place that we can find to put a pool, that would be regrettable. But we are open to, you know, better placement if you all deem that can be found.
Yeah, and it would be great if you could come out and see the site. And I think, you know, Nick, maybe you want to talk to offsets and all that.
Yeah, if I could just interject, so that the site is a canopy of large shade trees with lawn underneath it for the most part, at least this section of the site, that kind of the developed section of the site. But what that offers us actually is the opportunity to enhance the buffer and change that lawn into something that has a higher functional value in terms of water quality protection and wetland buffering. So we do have the wetland on the north, we have the pond on the east. We tried to straddle them and stay as far apart as we could. we did look at that section out of the buffer. The challenge of that, as Jason said, is we have a couple of constraints in there. We have a lot of trees that would need to come out, not only to build the pool, but to access the pool during construction and to fit something in there. And that's a real issue because there's some big trees there. The site that we're looking at now, although it is in the buffer, there are a total of, actually there on the plan, you'll see there are actually 3 trees that needed to come out. One of them actually was dead and they had that removed, I think last week. In fact, that's right next to the deck. The benefit of that, another benefit of keeping it in the buffer is that we have an existing deck there that's already built and we can double up on that and not need to have a bigger terrace area. So there's some advantages. I certainly understand the board's position. I understand the legislation and the mandate from the town board. I think it's, from my point of view, worth coming out and taking a look and seeing the spots that we have selected for mitigation. We have a lot of surface area we can work with out here. And I think do a really great job of buffering and frankly enhancing what's there functionally from its current position. I would hope that we could at least have a meeting on site and take it from there.
Very good. I agree 100%. I have to say, I don't disagree with anything that you said. The applicants, you guys, I get it. I mean, it's hard to argue that a pool is a necessity. That's a stretch, but all the reasons you used are, societally good things. They're just good. I mean, we should have a town pool, but that's a discussion that's way outside of this conversation, So I think we should all go out and take a look. I think that this could be potentially with a lot of stretching, maybe you can come up with a solution. Clearly what is here now, I don't think is the solution, honestly, but I think maybe a solution could be come up with, which would set up a template for non-essential construction within the wetlands buffers, where it actually protects the wetland better than what was there before. And if that can be proven scientifically, and it's something that we can hold up to the board, the town board and the town in general, the population, and say, look, we did our job. We protected the wetland. I don't know, really, I don't have high hopes that that can actually happen to the satisfaction of all my board members and to, peer review, but I'm throwing it out there as a possibility. I don't want to be closed-minded. I don't know. Anybody else have a comment on that?
Yeah, I'd highly suggest looking outside the buffer over here.
Yep.
I agree with Rob, but I think before we even take a site visit, and Max, please weigh in on this. I think the smaller pocket wetland, I think that Beatty and Watson should basically flag it. And then we need to look at it. Is it connected to another wetland? And even if it's not connected to another wetland, but it is considered a significant resource, then the wetland buffer still comes into play. Now, with that said,
Yeah.
another point that, again, you might want to talk to an arborist. I just vaguely remember your property, having been there when you built the little shed or cottage, whatever you want to call it. But a lot of the big trees are in lawn. Is that not true?
That's correct, yeah.
Okay, so then an arborist or a forester would really need to look at, particularly like tulips. Tulips are wonderful trees and get to be gigantic. But if they were grown on lawns, particularly when there was once forest around them, the ratio of diameter to height becomes problematic and the tree will ultimately come down. And we're sort of trying, we might be in a situation where we're fine, or we might be in a situation you're trying to save a tree that, whether it's a year or 10 years from now, won't survive anyway. So I think there are a lot of factors that need to be looked into before, we jump in and make a compromise. And I think two are very simple. One is that the other wetland needs to be looked at, and then Max can, recertify his thoughts on it. And some of the trees that you want to save, I think somebody needs to make a determination are they going to last long-term? Because, forests are not in stasis. They're dynamic ecosystems that continually change. So those are my comments.
I would just add, if we don't, if we could fit the project in out of the buffer, we could look at that. I think frankly, the advantage of putting it in the buffer is that the town gets a substantial amount of buffer restoration and remediation and converts lawn to functional wildlife habitat and water quality project that you wouldn't get if it's out of the buffer. So I'm just going to put that out there as something that I think, if the town is willing to entertain that as mitigation, I think that should, something certainly we've already put on the table, and we can look at, what more you want or whether this meets your needs. But it seems to me that that's a win-win for everybody.
Mitigation, though, while I'm not against it, mitigation is exceedingly difficult to be successful. And over the long term, really, takes maintenance of a decade in many cases or longer. So, it's not something to be entertained lightly. I don't think the board is against it, but a mitigation plan needs to be seriously thought out of what it's going to look like in a year, 3 years, 5 years, and so on.
Well, just to that point, Andy, and I appreciate that. This is, we talk about this as our forever home. We're here forever. This is a long-term project for us. We've been looking at native plantings along the wetland border, regardless, and that's certainly something we're committed to preserving. Currently, even along the road, in areas wherever we can, we're starting to plant.
We're taking out invasive things. We're planting native wildflowers. We've already planted unknown, I can't count how many trees we've planted. Like we're doing this naturally because this is our home. And, to your point, Andy, too, you have to wait and see, for all of this to come to fruition. But that is our very true intent, is to usher these protected, buffer zones to full maturity, as we have with the rest of the parts of our property that we have thus far ushered.
For sure.
Well, so do we want to go take a look at this, or are we saying
Mark,
that?
I think.
Mark,
Sorry, Dan, you go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, this strikes me based on everything that's been said tonight. I think it's really hard to know what the right answer is without seeing the property and walking it and getting a better understanding, which I'd certainly be willing to do. I think on the one hand, we have a duty and an obligation as members of the board, as dictated by Philipstown. Having said that, I think, to your point, we also have an obligation to homeowners to see if there's something that is a win-win and makes sense for them and for Philipstown and the wetlands. And I don't think we can do that without actually going out and looking at the property.
Thanks, John.
Can I just ask a question about the dimensions? So wetlands below 1/4 acre are non-jurisdictional, is that correct? Is that?
Yeah, yes, but they have to be evaluated. And like to Andy's point, if it serves some sort of significant purpose or holds a higher level of habitat, or is considered to be more valuable habitat, then we can make exceptions to that 1/4 acre. So
Max,
I think, yeah, no, go ahead.
Can you flag that wetland and then? Or the swamp?
I've been waiting. I've been waiting basically just to add that point. I think the next step logically would be for me to build, building off of what Andy said, for the homeowner to pay for a delineation. I can go out there, delineate the wetland, see if those connections exist to the lake, and then that should be added to the site plan and then resubmitted, and then we can set set a date for a site visit. Just so we can
Alright.
really get a full evaluation of what's on the property.
Everybody else in agreement on that?
Absolutely.
All right, so we'll coordinate with Max. Max usually coordinates directly with you guys, homeowners and architect, and we'll set it up at our earliest convenience.
All right. Thank you.
Right,
Thank
thanks so
you.
much, yes.
Thank you.
Good night.
And I can try to, if you can coordinate with me sooner than later or vice versa, I can try to get out and do the delineation by Sunday, maybe. So I can make that a pretty quick turnaround if everyone's okay with that.
You want the determination form submitted or?
No, I'll just tell you, basically we'll do what we did in the past. And
Oh, yeah,
once
yeah.
I go out and calculate acreage, we can determine how much the cost will be. But I would just need a contact so I can get on the property and let you guys know when I'm there.
That sounds great.
Okay,
All right.
thank you, Max.
Okay.
You.
Yep.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Koos. Unfortunately, Cheryl, I am not, that file refuses to open on my computer. So I'm working a little blind here. Does everybody else have that map in front of them for Koos, the driveway, or any of the information with it?
Yeah,
I have chosen, just so everybody understands, I've chosen not, or to try not to waste paper. So I have requested of Cheryl that she send me all the files digitally, and she's been able to do that for the most part, unless there's some gigantic map that is only available as a paper map when it's submitted. So unfortunately, I can't open this.
Yeah, the driveway is nearly an elevation. Cheryl, do you have it, or I could share my screen?
If you can share it, I don't have it on me.
Yes.
And I have John and Ralph on for this one.
How's that?
Great.
that works.
Thank you.
Is this the driveway that we saw a while back? Didn't we see a driveway along here? Am I,
Is there a map, like a map of the property also?
No, it's just the elevation is what we got.
but it's Justin's Way opposite the Bird and Bottle.
Uh-huh.
I feel like we were
Yeah, I
here.
was curious about that. Is Ralph, is he building the home that's lower down on Justin's Way? Is
Yeah,
it the
this is
same
a different
homeowner?
applicant, right?
This is the
Oh,
different,
okay.
this is the different driveway. Okay. To the different property.
And
Hi,
I'm-
this is John Dahlgren from Tim Miller. I'm filling in for Steve Marino tonight. He couldn't be with us, taking a vacation, but there should be a plan with the application that shows the layout of the driveway.
Let me see if I have it. That would be,
That's good. That's set up for big plans.
no, it's what was in with that email was just an agenda. So we don't have the other sheet. Do you have it on your computer and you could share it with us, and I'll stop sharing?
I don't. I'm at home. I don't have it. Have access to that drawing.
What is the main issue that this comes under our venue?
Okay, so let me summarize if I could. This application for a wetland permit involves the construction of a driveway, this driveway, to a house site. And the property was approved as a subdivision in 2004. And in laying out the driveway to that house site at the top of the hill, an existing traveled way was selected, and there's a a roughed in road which follows a utility lines, electrical utility lines. And so this existing traveled way intersects the edge of a wetland and crosses the wetland buffer. So that's the issue. We're looking for a permit to build the driveway, and it does involve disturbance of a small portion of wetland and wetland buffer. The amount of wetland affected is about 1,189 square feet, or 0.03 acres, and the buffer affected is 12,329 square feet, or 0.28 acres. And it's important to point out that this area was already disturbed for that previous road. And what we're doing is just completing the driveway. And as part of that 2004 approval, wetland mitigation plan, conceptual, was
Lost connection, John. Guys, in the interim, with repeated clicking, I managed to get one of the maps to open so I can see what John is describing. As you drive up Justin's Way, you get to the top and there's an asphalt circle at the end, and then there's an asphalt driveway that goes up to a house pretty close.
Do you want to share your screen, Mark? Do you have
Yes, if I actually don't know how. I hate to admit ignorance, but
so what you're going to do is you're going to go down to the bottom and you'll see share screen. You see that? At the bottom of your screen?
Yep.
You hit share screen, it's going to give you a window and you're going to pick the file out.
I'm going to try. This.
Hello? Okay, I'm back. I'm not sure what happened.
Hi, John. I'm sorry. It just dropped out, but as you were off, I was able to get one of the maps to open, and I'm feebly trying to share my screen with my fellow members.
Anything else that you would like to study that's not presented, or something that
Allow to share screen. How do I do this?
You see the share screen below?
Yeah, it's actually already lit up as green.
is that the one you need?
Oh, it's because somebody else is sharing already.
You just did it.
You got me?
Yep.
All right, so there we have it. I don't know if you can see my cursor, but there's Justin's Way into the circle, asphalt, and then up an asphalt driveway to an existing house. It's listed as a grass travelway, and it runs all the way down here through the blue area, which is the wetland buffer, snakes its way all the way up here to the bottom of the map, and here's the house all the way down here. So this is all existing traveled, and the blue is labeled proposed wetland buffer encroachment. The yellow is labeled proposed wetland disturbance. So you're actually disturbing an actual wetland, not just the buffer. Am I correct, John?
Yes, you're correct. A very small 0.03 acres of wetland.
Okay, just quickly, what is that? Is that just marshland, right? I mean, I'm using the wrong word. It's just literally wetland, right? It's not a stream or anything like that.
What happened is this is all on a hillside, as you can see. It's quite steep topography.
Yep.
And it's the wetland kind of takes in drainage that's running off the hill and form the wetland. And as part of the previous disturbance, there is kind of water running, out of the hillside.
All right.
And that's created the wetland.
All right, and in the pink area, we've got proposed wetland and buffer restoration, which you can explain to us. And then we've got over here, the purple is proposed wetland expansion, which is a very interesting concept, I think, to me. Can you tell us what you're thinking there? So when we go look, we'll understand better.
Right. Well, right now, like I said, the way is right now disturbed, and the species are, have taken hold, including, like I said, Phragmites, which is pretty persistent, and you want to get rid of that if you can, and Japanese barberry and Oriental bittersweet. And we're proposing to remove all that in the area shown on the plan, the mitigation plan, and then enhance it with native species and a planting plan. And that's on the mitigation plan of what plants are proposed.
Okay. All right, well, I mean, I don't know what you guys think, but I think this one, we've got it, again, we got to go out and take a look.
We need to take a look. From looking at the plan, is the house on the bottom most of the plan, the proposed house? So it's at the
Yes.
top. It's the last, we'll call it the last lot in the subdivision, the furthest in.
Yep, seems to be right at the top of the hill, at elevation 680. Right
Yeah.
here.
With a big switchback to get to it.
Yeah, I mean, MJ, were you on the board long enough to have looked at this subdivision?
I was not there when the subdivision was created, but I've been there since.
Right, but I'm talking about when somebody basically just took a bulldozer and plowed that right away, all the way in.
Well, I remember it because I live close
Okay.
by. I live
I mean, that goes back.
2 minutes away. Yeah.
It's about 15 years ago. I think we need to look at, we need to look at it. It's unfortunately a severely disturbed site, which is no fault of the proposed homeowner. And I think we just need to look at it.
Yeah, agreed.
I appreciate that, John, is it? Yeah. That you and your firm, have definitely given some thought into, remediation and mitigation. And I think we need to look at it.
Okay.
And probably look at it with you or somebody from the firm that's very familiar with it.
Right. So I'm been with the firm for a while, but Steve Marino's our wetland scientist. He's a professional wetland scientist. He's prepared the mitigation plan, and he will definitely be on the site visit with you, can answer any questions. Okay.
Very good.
John, can you have him reach out to me so we can set up a date to do that?
Sure. Okay.
And the other thing I'd like him to look into is just whether or not he's going to need any other board approval for this project beyond the conservation board.
Right. Okay. I'll pass that along too. I know there's
Yeah,
a septic approval is necessary too, but that's I do understand that it's outside of any buffer.
But
Okay. I just
what you're
I'm
thinking about is total square footage disturbed, that it would come
that
under
and steep slopes. Yeah, steep slopes possibly. I don't want to have this process not run concurrently with another board. And then you guys have the ability to say, oh, well, we've already issued a permit without them weighing out their process. And most of the time, if other boards are involved, they will end up being the lead agency on seeker. So I need, we would then issue a permit after those determinations were completed.
Okay. So I'll pass that along to Steve. He'll be in touch with you, Max.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, John.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Cheryl, am I still sharing my screen?
No.
Thank you, Andy. All right. Okay, next is LaShinju.
Okay, so Tom Lewis and Terry.
Do we have the applicants for this one? Cheryl, are they in?
They are on. I have Thomas Lewis and Terry Dressbach.
Oh, there we go. Hi, all. Let's see if I can manage to open this one. I'm having difficulties here, unfortunately. My apologies. So I guess if you wouldn't mind, I don't seem to have a map in this package, but my package, my digital package is a little bit messed up, so my apologies. Would you mind just giving us a quick description of the project, please?
Sure.
I think Andy is going to be the lead on this one, I suspect.
Do you want to share your screen? And you had some nice aerial photos.
My screen?
Yeah, you had some nice aerial photos in your proposal.
Okay, let's see. I have to admit, I'm similarly not good at, so somewhere in here. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Someone else is sharing the screen. Perfect.
Excellent.
Okay, so the parcels we're looking at here comprise about 25 acres, and it's running, as you can see, the stream is running kind of down the center of it. There's a pond formed in the middle. So if you just go to the next map, the page 5 there, yeah, that's kind of like a rough estimate of the amount of area that's regulated on the property. And so we're proposing to go through, the homeowner or landowner wants to manage the invasive plants on her property and begin to kind of go through restoration of the areas. There's quite a bit of the property that is in fairly good shape. And there's, as you can see in the density map on page 4, there's quite a bit that's very high density. And I don't know if you did read kind of the intro, you know, it's very clear, like there's a lot of invasive plants. We're going to be here for quite a while, kind of working to restore large sections of the property using kind of some of the plants that are there, possibly some enhancement plants. But in order to kind of get down that road, we have a lot of barberry, garlic mustard, kind of a normal suite of invasive plants that we want to deal with that exist in high density in these regulated areas. And so that's what our permit application is to do. There is some sections that I'm not looking to use. I don't think that herbicides would be appropriate. As you go down the stream, it's quite a braided channel, and as a lot of the area, there's virtually no soil. So I don't think that we would be able to use herbicides in any way that would work well and not have a chance of affecting anything else. So we're going to try propane torching of a lot of the shrubs in there, which has been found to be effective. It's a little less effective and takes quite a bit longer. But as I kind of mentioned and wrote into the plan, like we're, you know, it's a long-term strategy. So I think it's worth it to have less impact where we can. And then as we move away from that braided channel, as there begins to be some soil, we'll start using kind of more you know, highly targeted herbicide applications, and then kind of depending on if it's a wetland or, you know, kind of what the existing soil is like and what the topography is like. So I think that's kind of a short summary of what we're doing. It's a fairly large project, and very excited to get going on it.
All right, thank you, Thomas. Max and Andy, thoughts?
I mean, I think it's a very, what I've seen, at least looking at on a paper, I think it's an exceedingly well thought out and documented proposal.
Thank you, Andy.
I think we should do a site visit, less for a regulatory standpoint than, you know, other than Max and I don't think the rest of you are necessarily familiar with invasives. And I'm gathering that this is sort of a poster child for it in the area.
Yeah, you could see
species here that you might see a little one or two, but I'm gathering that there's a lot more of it.
Yeah, and that's part of it with I mean, it's in a valley. So we have in a valley and we have near a house. And so there's like different levels and different types of disturbance. Like along the valley, you know, the slopes on the eastern side, there's just a lot of like runoff coming down from other properties. And so It's just a way that things have been intruded. So there are like high density areas, but nested inside of that, there's like, I mean, just now, obviously you can see all the ramps and you can see a lot of different, the one stream that comes in on the east side, there's, you know, bloodroot and Dutchman breeches growing kind of nested amongst garlic mustard. So that there is a lot of stuff going on there. And so, which is kind of why we're really excited to work on it. And I guess it is a poster child of a lot of different invasive plants for sure.
Yeah, and you know, as we talk more about, you know, wetland mitigation on other projects, sometimes just controlling invasives is a part of that. I think this could be a very good learning for the group. That's
yeah. I liked your point about mitigation. I mean, no matter what you're going to do, it's going to take a lot of time. And something like this is like taking the natural topography and the communities that are existing and trying to let them thrive without manipulating the landscape as you know, really in any way. So, except for in the plant communities. So, I think it's important.
All right, thank you again, Thomas. Max, do you have anything to add to that, or you want to just coordinate the site visits?
Yeah, if we can just set up a time that the board can get out there. We'll try to set it up on the day that we're heading out to other sites, so we can just talk, Tom, you and I, so we can get that rolling.
Okay. I do have one question. Yeah. Andy, you mentioned that it wasn't part of the regulatory process. So
no, I said that for a site visit, it's not that you're not within the regulatory. Something like this, you know, except that it is very big. It's something that, you know, Max might say, I've looked at it and here are my recommendations. Because he's a New York State certified pesticide applicator, so am I, not professionally though. But I think this one, I think the really good thing, it would be a great learning, I think, for the entire group to see what's there and what you're planning to do. And perhaps, you know, a year from now, revisit the property to see how it's changed.
Okay, yeah, that'd be great. The reason I brought it up is garlic mustard is currently forming saliques, and in short period will have created seeds.
Yeah.
And so our application of triclopyr will kind of inhibit the production of the seeds and the saliques, but we don't have a ton of time for that to happen. So I guess I was asking to see how this would change the permit timeframe.
So maybe we can do a site visit quickly, or some of us.
I mean,
How's your success, by the way, been with using triclopyr on garlic mustard in letting grasses and sedge, because it's not selective for grasses and sedges. I assume that's what's in your mind will come up at least.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, it's effective. I haven't had, I mean, it takes kind of a long time to kill the rosettes. I think that's just because a lot of times when we're treating rosettes, we treat that in the fall when things are just kind of moving a little more slowly. But triclopyr is effective on garlic mustard for sure. And the thing about it inhibiting the seed maturation is something that you read about, but it's not actually on the label anywhere. And so we've collected, as I've gone and treated certain plants, we've collected seeds that's formed after that. And I mean, this is all anecdotal, so whatever, but none of them have germinated. So I kind of believe what you read out there about triclopyr inhibiting that. So I think.
And out of curiosity, using the ester, the M.
I'm sorry, what was that?
Using the water-based or the ester-based?
This is water-based, yeah. I used to use, well, I mean, so the amine you can get as a water-based with Garland 4 Ultra, also water carrier. But this is not volatile. So the Vastland, over the winter, we asked, is this product that I learned about last year that is not labeled for very many plants for whatever reason. And so, because it's a very simple herbicide that's been used for a long time. So I asked requested the DEC for a 2E recommendation for a whole suite of plants. So now we can use it on these invasive plants, which we got over the winter. So it's not volatile. It has less impact on grasses. Like some of the more volatile triclopyr can actually hurt grasses and sedges. And it's actually labeled for use in water bodies too. Not that we're proposing that, but.
Can you guys hear me? This is Terry.
Yes.
Yes, hi. If I can just say hello, because I have a feeling that I'm gonna get to know everybody really well. And I'm really thrilled at the idea that you're gonna come here. As Tom said, it's quite an extraordinary project. It's 26 acres. It's been neglected for, who knows, forever. The houses are from 1880, I think it is, 1870, pretty much untouched. And the property has invasives like barberry and things like that that have come in, encroached from outside. And then there are the traditional 19th century plants. We had wisteria and bamboo and of course bittersweet. And so it's, but our goal is to restore the property, and that's not gonna get accomplished in my lifetime. So, the goal is to see how close we can get and then continue it multi-generation. It's a wonderful project.
So I guess building off Tom's point, I mean, would the board feel comfortable voting on a conditional permit, that we could issue after the site visit? That way he doesn't have to wait another month for approval potentially.
Absolutely. I'm in for that.
I'm fine with that.
Yes.
That's great. Thank you.
Sounds good.
So let's see, can I have a motion to allow a conditional permit based on Max's visit and our visit?
I'll make the motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
You have it. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Have a great evening.
Thanks, Max. Okay.
No problem.
I think that stormwater may actually fall under the heading of the project that we're going to talk about in other discussion. Would you agree, Mr. Max?
Yeah, it could be.
Cloudbank. Max, you want to take the lead on that? You were the one most intimately involved with the event.
Yeah, I guess if you can let Beth and Mark Amler in if he's there.
Yeah, I just let them in, Max.
I don't know. And Jonathan Rose, I think, too, if he'd like to talk. Okay.
Yeah.
I guess you all saw Beth's update or action plan moving forward. So I guess I'd just like her to take the floor and kind of lead you through that and bring us all up to date, and then I can kind of fill in any gaps if there are any.
Sure. I prepared what I submitted today, and I'm sorry for the late timing of it, but it's a summary sort of where we've been with this project. As you will probably remember, last year you approved the dredging project for Cloudbank Pond. The main reason we wanted to dredge the pond was to relieve pressure on the dam on the property, which was constructed in the early 1900s. And the engineers that have been monitoring the dam and reporting on it for the roses felt that it was important that the sediment be removed behind the dam. And while we were at it, we had noticed, we looked at the pond in 2009 for the roses and again in 2019, and noticed that there was a pretty significant buildup of organic sediment plants. And as the sediments got accumulated, the temperature in the pond was fluctuating pretty widely during the summer. So we applied for a permit to use hydraulic dredging to clean the pond and return it to its deeper state behind the dam, and also a slightly deeper condition throughout the pond to take the organic sediments out. We got permission from New York State DEC to, we got the permit from them. The requirement that they had was that we avoid potential impacts to timber rattlesnakes. So we set up the dewatering area last fall after November 1st to avoid the potential for getting snakes caught in the dewatering area, which is outside of the 100-foot from the pond. The dredging itself started in mid-March, the staging and the getting the dredge to the property. And the project was proceeding much as we had hoped and planned until the week of April 19th, when the dredge hit what I believe was a pocket of clay. Unexpected to have that kind of soil in a geomorphic setting like this, but they hit a pocket of clay. They churned up some very fine particulates suspended in the water column, and the geotextile dewatering bags did not remove those particulates from the water. That water was pumped back into the pond and caused turbidity. As soon as we realized what was going on, pumping and dredging were paused, and we tried to figure out the best way to address the water quality in the pond and also downstream, because the pond in the early spring, of course, was being recharged pretty quickly, and the water did go over, some of the water did go over the outlet and ended up in the Manitoga quarry pool or pond. Max and DEC came out, did a site inspection with us, and we tried various things. One of them was to stop water leaving the pond, but given the rate of recharge, that wasn't safe for the dam. It was causing too much pressure on the dam. So we pumped some water out of the pond into the dewatering area, and water samples were taken and sent to a lab for analysis to see if there was some way to get a flocculant or some sort of chemical treatment that would take the turbidity out of the water. That process took longer than we expected, but in the interim, the pond did begin to clear pretty quickly. And that, to me, is evidence that the turbidity was caused by a clay type of mineral rather than some of the finer silts that are in some of the mineral soils around. And we were in touch with Manitoga. We were in touch with the Roses, of course, and we were monitoring the situation. And the water has cleared substantially in the pond and is no longer causing turbidity downstream. So Max asked that we come and report to you and share our plan for moving forward. When we got the information back from the lab on use of flocculants, we consulted DEC, and they said that we would need to get a speedies permit if we were going to try to use a flocculant to clarify the water. And we decided that given the natural settling of the water, it was better to try to lower the water in the pond. The Roses installed a number of years ago a bypass pipe, so that if there was a large storm coming, one of the nor'easters or hurricanes, they could, using a small pump, lower the level in the pond to provide more storage capacity. So our proposal is to use that bypass to lower the level of the pond by 2 feet or so below the outlet, so that the water in the pond is detained, and then install additional turbidity curtains and filter sacks to the end of the discharge pipe, so that we can see if we can begin to finish the eastern lobe of the pond carefully and slowly. We were having no problem with water clarity prior to hitting the clay lens, but I don't expect that there are going to be any clay lenses in the eastern or central portions of the pond. So that we have stopped work, paused work, and tried to figure out the best solution for getting the pond cleaned out and the water back to its normal clarity and quality. Mark Anwar, who is Pristine Waters, the person doing the actual dredge work, is also available if there are questions. But
all right, thank you, Beth. Max, do you want to tell me, do you want to explain to us what your thinking is on this, or I actually have a quick question. You said that a pump was put in and used to drain down the level just to be safe. Where was that pipe?
There's no, the pipe goes around the dam. It is around the southern side of the dam and discharges down into the stream below the dam.
Still back into the stream. So any
Still back into the stream, absolutely.
turbidity would have continued down in. Was there a prediction or an estimate of how much material was you thought you were going to be pulling out of the pond when the initial, when you initially surveyed it and made an assessment of what you were going to try to do? Do you have any idea of the volume?
Yes, we had estimated about 7,000 cubic yards, and I think we're probably about halfway through that quantity, because a lot of that quantity was right behind the dam. We're probably maybe a little more than halfway through removing that quantity.
As you said, most of that came from right behind the dam. Probably
the heaviest material was behind the dam, and what we had anticipated taking out in the rest of the pond was a highly organic sediment comprised of fibrous plant material. So as I say, they had finished the western lobe of the pond, and when this I don't know, I wasn't a diver, I wasn't in the pond, but I have to assume it may have been clay left over from when the dam was constructed. It almost appears to be bentonite. It's very gray and very fine, and it does settle out relatively quickly compared to a mineral soil silt component.
All right, thank you, Beth. Anybody else want to ask their questions?
I do have sort of a question, or what sort of makes me nervous. There is very little clay in the Hudson Highlands. So it's definitely bentonite that was in there, or some other similar type of water expanding clay, which basically was there to line the pond or seal the dam when it was built. I don't really think you should be, I'm not an expert on this, but I really think at this point, one should think about, do we really want to remove any more of this?
Well, if I may, I couldn't agree with you more. There's no geomorphic reason for there to be that kind of clay in that position on the landscape. It doesn't happen. So what we were about to do is start to dredge the portions of the pond that are away from the dam that I am reasonably sure we have probed the sediments. Obviously, I didn't probe a clay lens, but we've probed the sediments pretty thoroughly through that pond. And my opinion is that the vast majority of the sediment in that pond is highly organic and not mineral content. And it's actually played out too in the dewatering bags, they, as you may know, they fill up and then they move the hose. There are 3 bags out there, and those bags are reducing to a level that tells me that the sediment that's coming out of that pond is very light and very organic. It's not a firm mineral. So the reason I want to make sure that the rest of the pond is cleaned is because the organic sediments are great in terms of holding nutrients until the oxygen level drops in the summer, and those nutrients are released and cause further growth in the Roses Pond, and also could be contributing to downstream algal growth in the Quarry Pond and ultimately in the river. So I would like to finish what we started. I think that the likelihood that we're going to hit another clay lens in the eastern portion of the pond is very, very slight. And we're not going to get bitten twice. We've seen it happen. We will be monitoring the return water. We have the silt bags available. They have a 10 micron or less capacity. So with the turbidity curtains, the lowering of the pond so that it's not discharging, those are our precautions to try to make sure that this doesn't happen a second time.
Andy, do you want to continue with any question?
The question becomes, how can one, I mean, is it, and Max, you might be able to weigh in on this. Is it time to do some, borings to try to figure out where the clay is? Because the type of dredge you're using is, sort of non-specific. And from my understanding of it is you're catching it once you've already started sucking clay out, rather than trying to prevent hitting the clay. And quite frankly, if I own the pond, I'd be very nervous to see the clay being removed because it was put there for a reason. It's part of the structure.
If I could, where they hit it, I don't think it was, I think it was not structurally to seal the pond. I think it was left over from sealing the dam. They hit it up in the up toward the inlet stream rather than near the dam itself. And I can tell you, having probed the other sediments, that there's up to 2 feet of very soft sediment that I am quite sure is not clay.
But we don't have, I mean, we obviously don't have any definitive evidence that there isn't clay in some other location, right? So
nope, I don't have the definitive evidence. We can certainly we can probe the eastern lobe of the pond with a core and see if we see any evidence of clay. We can take that precaution. It's a good idea to make sure. I don't think we're going to find clay away from the dam, but
I'm sorry, can I just note that with the proposed plan, if the water is 2 feet below the lip of the dam, by the way, I don't understand why it shouldn't just be 1 feet, but anyway, if it's 2 feet below, then no water is going into the rest of the ecosystem. So if we happen to hit clay, it'll get in the water and then it'll settle. And also we're adding significant filtering systems that we didn't have before. So, and the last thing is we're going to monitor it. So if we hit it, we'll know within minutes, we'll stop, and that'll be that. So, one of our goals is really to get this project done. And so I would ask, I think there's enough precautions there and attention now to something that we didn't expect before. That I'm not sure that probing will make a difference.
Can I ask a question? You mentioned silt bags, which you've added as the filtering, and there, how many microns did you say?
10.
That? 10. And isn't
do we have any? I mean, can you provide us with any actual plan or document that shows specifics on all these things that you're discussing as mitigation moving forward.
Sure.
I understand that you're giving us text and language describing a perfect scenario, but it's all untested again. And my big concern here is that the majority of the project that is completed, that was one of the main reasons why we permitted the project, was, to preserve the integrity of the dam. And that portion seems to be complete based on, all of our discussions now. And there's a lot of, the project could have been timed out completely differently. This could have been started in August, when water levels were extremely low, this summer. The water level was supposed to be drawn down, 8 inches below the dam before work even began, per your plans. So a lot of these things, it's hard for me to see where the line, I understand that there is some sort of steps that are trying to be taken to correct the issue. But it's hard for me to see, a real way forward that guarantees that no further damage can be done, even with this action plan put in place. Without reassessing and reevaluating, and moving forward at a different time.
The reason the project didn't proceed in August was because the DEC asked us to wait till November.
No, I'm talking about August 2021. So, this summer, your permit's valid until 2025. Our permit is valid until, 2022. So, the components of the site and the conditions of the site needed to be monitored, much more stringently, so that something like this wouldn't happen. And, it did, which is unfortunate. And I understand that we're trying to correct it here. It's just hard when, we don't know. There's still a lot of uncertainty about what's there.
But if the water is below the level of the dam, then what's the impact? The
impacts to the pond. The impacts to the pond and the organisms and the ecology of the pond itself. And we have the board here is upholding, town code, essentially, which regulates that pond.
Max, I would agree with you, except that we have, since the water clarity has come back and we've been able to see, there are still lots of fish and lots of newts and lots of biological activity that has gone on in the pond. I would be much more concerned if the material that had been suspended was a silt that has the tendency to suffocate aquatic invertebrates and amphibians. I think in this case, given the clarity of the water for 4 weeks before the clay was encountered, I think we can get the project completed quickly and the equipment out of the pond and the pond returned to its natural state for the majority of the growing season, the majority of the warm summer season, so that the organisms can reestablish in the pond. I don't think we didn't see any evidence of fish kill or other damage, and the downstream pond cleared as well, which is why I included those pictures in my summary. So I think we have shown through 4 weeks of active dredging, dive-assisted dredging, that we can get this pond cleaned out effectively and let the water, the dewatering bags, do their thing during the summer when the water will evaporate and get back into the pond.
I'm in agreement with Max that I think that before anything happens, there needs to be a full narrative, a plan of action.
We can do that.
You know, you had a minor catastrophe.
No one is saying that
Yeah.
what happened was not serious. It was very serious. It was
And
taken very seriously.
No, and I think we're sensitive to that, but I do agree with Max. And I think that, you know, the board would not be doing their due diligence if we did not have a complete narrative now of what's going to happen and when.
I think we can get you that very quickly.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I don't feel comfortable having the work continue until, you know, we can all evaluate what you bring back to the board in that plan. I mean, I just feel like even the circumstances you just described, that's a static, and that you're describing a condition that already happened. And what we're trying to mitigate is it happening again. So right. I understand that, yeah, maybe this time things are okay, but maybe next time they might not be, or they'll you know, the damage might be different, or, you know, we don't know. So that's my concern really moving forward, because in every case, this was a violation of the plan and, you know, violated sections of our code. And I need to weigh that out in this process as well. So, you know, I understand the goals of the project, but this board needs to look at all of the aspects of everything, you know, that's in front of us now.
Max, so I'm thinking probing was done in the beginning and no clay was found. So clearly the probing was not sufficient. So maybe probing should be done now to determine where the clay lens, or if it's not a lens, it may be the lining of the whole pond. Where is it coming from? And then work your way out from that. And if it's determined that it is in fact just at the base of the dam, then that should be put into the action plan. You know, I mean, clearly there's clay there and it wasn't found in the initial investigation.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to be the one playing the role of providing the solutions here. I think that that's a logical starting point. I think that if I were in their shoes, that's where I would go. I would see what's there, like take a hard look, and then see if you're really proposing to continue on in the action plan, then I think you really need to vet out what is, like, I understand that you've done that to some extent, but it's still, like Mark said, proved insufficient in this case. So, you know, that to me is of the utmost importance.
And I think I agree that probing the eastern lobe of the pond to make sure that we are not encountering more clay. If we do, then the possibility that the pond is lined with clay is certainly there, and we need to take that into consideration. But remember that this pond is large enough that it is unlikely, in my opinion, that the whole thing was lined with clay when it was constructed. That's a vast amount of bentonite that I think we would have found had we been probing to the extent that we probed the sediments as we studied this pond. But we'll look. We'll take a core samples in the eastern lobe and let you know what we find.
Very good. Max, I think you need to let us know what the next steps are, because the probing, you may want to be present, or at least be intimately involved with, or
I would rather them put together a report that outlines locations probed. It shows us how far they probed, you know, all these things in an actual plan, you know, with maps, and that, you know, each like reference points and all of those things put together, and then, you know, we can evaluate that as a group. You know, and basically hold off any more dredging until we've concluded that everyone here is comfortable to proceed, if that's the way the board would like to go.
I, for one, 100% agree. How does the rest of the board feel on that?
I agree too.
I agree.
So does that mean a stop on the permit right now while this investigative work is complete and the report is prepared? Is that what you're proposing, Max and Mark?
Max?
Well, yeah, there's a stop work order on the project.
And that continues until this
That
is
continues, yeah.
until this is provided. That's what I wanted to
Right.
clarify.
Yeah. And
We have paused work, and we will continue to pause work until you are satisfied that we have provided enough information to continue. But that's just so you know, that's the Rose's intent, is to comply with whatever it is the town and DEC want, but they do want to finish the project that they've begun.
right, I think the board is weighing out whether or not to revoke the permit. So that's where we're at.
Okay.
How quickly do you think this probing and subsequent report can be produced so we can act on it quickly in your favor, or, you know, to your benefit? We can act quickly.
We can get the probing done, started immediately, and put together the report and the documentation. We're trying to get all the pieces in place so that we can finish what was begun.
So I would say do so, please. And
Yes.
Max, you know, will let us know as soon as he's received the information and he can disseminate it. And then I don't know whether it has to wait until the next month's meeting. That's kind of your guys' call. If Max is comfortable with what he finds, and we can all have I don't know, through an email chain or whatever, if you guys want to discuss it.
I think that would work.
That would.
I have a question.
Yes,
Is there
Bob.
something we can do otherwise, you know, maybe even like sampling the sediment in a different way? Because the probing didn't seem to work. So I'm just wondering if there's some other technique that we could utilize, you know, some imaging techniques or something like that that might be, you know, a little more sensitive.
When I talk about probing, I'm talking about taking a pole and probing the sediment to determine depth to refusal. But what we would do to determine the content is actually use a core and take samples of the sediment for laboratory analysis.
Oh, so it's coring, and then you do some spectral analysis on it or something?
The lab will do an assessment to find out the particle size and composition. Yeah.
Okay.
All right, well, that makes sense to me. If you guys
Can I just ask?
Just to build off of Mark's point, can you just submit everything to the town to Cheryl? So we can,
yes.
it can get, yeah.
Absolutely.
But can I just ask a question? Because I want to understand the objective. I'm sorry, I'm a little confused. If the water is significantly below the level of the dam and therefore is not exiting, that's preventing. So I'm trying to understand what's the purpose of what we're studying if the plan provides that no water will enter into past the dam. Then I just want to make sure that we're studying what's necessary. I want to know what's the purpose of the study and what's the outcome that you'll be seeking to make your decision from.
Right, Jonathan, I think the point that has been made is that this was an accident, unforeseen circumstances. So what if, while you're working on it and you find more clay, you produce turbidity within the pond, you're waiting for it to subside, and a hurricane comes in and it overtops the dam and all the mud goes down the stream again? Or what happens if a water spout comes in or a plane crashes into the lake? I mean, it's unforeseen conditions, circumstances that would cause something that what you're saying makes complete sense. If there's so much room up to the dam right now, fine, but that may not be the case throughout the process. And we're trying to make absolutely sure this does not happen again.
Got it. Okay.
to add onto Mark's point there, even if this was just an isolated pond that we regulated and this had happened, you know, the fact that it happened and the water was turbid, we would have weighed that in our decision-making process during the permit application, the initial permit application hearings. You know, we don't want the water quality to be detrimental to the ecology of the pond, you know.
Neither do the roses. I mean,
We're doing this to support the ecology of the pond. This is all.
I'm not saying, yeah, that wasn't my point. My point was that, like, just to understand that even if the water isn't conveyed past that point downstream, it's still important, obviously, to everybody here, based on what you all just said, that you know, the water remains healthy and the system functions correctly.
Right. I understand. I guess I do want to just underscore one point so that you understand. We were asked by the DC to remove the sediment that had built up against the dam for the dam's structural betterments. And we decided or requested to be able to proceed with a larger project, which is more expense and time and delay and everything for us, because that was best recommendation as to the best thing to do to support the future, the ecological health of the dam, of the pond, that the pond was getting too nutrient rich. So I just want you to understand that that was, you know, that's why we want to finish the work in this lobe. It has no aesthetic difference. It doesn't make any other difference. It's to improve the health of the pond.
Understood.
I think that should get included in the narrative, and if you can give us I know that you've provided a lot of background regarding the ecological studies of the pond itself that have been done, but if you can pinpoint, you know, why specifically those things need to be accomplished and what you're hoping they will provide, what benefit they'll provide to the ecology of the pond, that will also help in this process. So, you know, the board is very aware of, you know, natural eutrophication, you know, the different stages of the life cycle of a lake, you know, like, you know, we're not, you know, we're pretty learned in all those subject areas. So, you know, we understand, so you can provide us with that information and we can use that to evaluate what you're trying to convey.
We will do that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all for your service.
Thank you.
All right.
Any other questions?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
Thank you, Beth.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
You too.
Good night.
All right. I believe we have completed our agenda, ladies and gentlemen. Can I, does anybody have any questions or comments beyond that? All right, then can I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make
Oh, wait,
that.
I got one.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I emailed you all a draft link for the online NRI tool. If you want to take a look at that, it's pretty, the layers are, I still need to go through and like kind of fine tune the coloring and stuff, but it's all up there. So it eventually should be able to be posted online pretty soon. So
very cool, Max.
Yeah, very cool.
Mike, I see you there. Do you have anything you want to tell us?
No, just obviously on commenting earlier, I know, again, we get into these difficult issues regarding approvals for non-essential equipment such as the pools and so forth. You know, people are going to, and it can be totally correct that putting it there is not environmentally overall on the property the greatest thing. But the problem you get, unfortunately, you get into is a slippery slope with what you're going to allow and what you're not going to. And so maybe we have to think a little more about if mitigation plans or some sort of restoration is outweighs the, you know, that happening. But I just think it's difficult to start to allow that to happen and that not become a problem down the road where people say, you let them do it, why can't you let me? So
we have a lot, we do, you're right, Mike. We have a lot of families that have teenagers that need pools, so.
But can I
Could be a slippery slope for us. There are a lot of teenage
That
Family
was a new one for me, the opioid problem.
I just wanted to say that the environmental impact of having a pool is not insignificant. You're talking about where is this water coming from, the chemical, the heating. How do you mitigate for all of those things? If 5,000 people decide to put pools in their backyard, that is not an insignificant environmental impact. Like,
Not to mention the pond they have is swimmable. So
Maybe we can convince the Shakespeare Festival to put in a pool. What do you think?
I'm down, but I'm not it.
All right, enough of the fun, kids. All right, can I have a motion
I'll make the motion.
and a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Good night, all.
Good night.
Good
Thank
night.
you.
Take care,
Night.
everybody. Bye-bye.
See ya.